Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to The Reason We Learn. I'm your host, Deb Philman. And this is the channel where we talk about all things related to education and parenting, even, and just all the things that we're talking about a lot lately in that realm. So I go out there and try to find guests who can come and share some kind of new insight with you as to what is going on in education, but also what ought to be going on, what we're not talking about, which is what should it be? I spent a lot of time talking about what it shouldn't be, namely what it is. But what about what it should be? Well, today's guest, David Rodriguez, is going to talk to us about his vision. He's a visionary, and he is coming up with some innovative ways for parents to take charge of their kids' education out in the Bay Area. So a little bit about David. He helps parents empower their children using homeschooling, apprenticeships, and customized learning strategies. He's the principal of Valor Academy, a homeschool coach, and publisher of The Underground History of American Education by John Taylor Gatto, who some refer to as the most courageous teacher. I would tend to agree with that. He's also founder of Education Options Expo and Education Options TV, where he's introduced thousands of parents to respectful schools and approaches to learning, and interviewed world leaders who are demonstrating the future of education today. So please help me in welcoming David Rodriguez. Hi, I just did your intro.
Hello,
Are you there?
Deb.
Can
Great
you
to be
hear
with
me?
you. Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You're just a little blurry. Just a little blurry. Got it?
Okay. Well,
Okay.
hopefully the internet picks up. I don't know what it is, but I am in
Okay.
Texas right now at a friend's place. So
Oh,
let
okay.
me
You're
know
in
if there's
Texas.
any breakup. Yeah.
Okay. So far, so good. Well, we'll do our best. So I just introduced you as a visionary, as a person who is coming up with, new strategies, new ways of helping parents and kids customize their education. And when I, introed the whole show, I said we talk a lot about on this channel about what school shouldn't be, which is namely what it is, and we don't talk a lot about what it ought to be. And so I told my audience that I've brought you here to help us talk about that. So let's do that. What should education be right now, David? What should it be that it's not?
Education should be what we naturally do every day, is freedom to do what we want, because learning is enjoyable and fun. And that's what you and your audience members know as educated individuals, is that we learn because it's pleasurable and it's enjoyable. Of course, it helps us to do different things. We acquire new skills. We can use it for our job and our career, our relationships, our money, our health. Skills are critical, and this is why you would learn, rather than being graded like a piece of meat as the system is
Right.
now. Learning is the reward. And this is one of the best things that you can begin with, is understanding that fact, is that you learn because you want to be a better you want to be a better Deb, or whatever you call yourself out there. And I want to be a better James Rodriguez and achieve my goals and dreams. And this is why schools should ask, if it's a true school, and there's some, and we can talk about some of them today, and it's great to be with you and your audience members. What schools are asking that question? What is your dream? Because I went to 12 years of government monopoly compulsory school, and nobody's ever asked me that question. They said, what's the job that you want? What's the career that you want? But that's different than what's your dream. That's different than what your purpose is. That's different than why did you incarnate, or why did God make you? Why did your parents make you? And what are you doing here? Like, this is a bigger, more exciting question that we want to know. Children have a deep intuition about this experience, and they'll tell you why they came sometimes. I mean, it's very interesting, the idea that souls come here, or God makes us, or whatever y'all believe out there. But the fact that you are here listening, present, and conscious moment now, and so am I, and so your listeners, is a gift. This is the sacred consciousness. I think one of the gifts of life is to know that and to feel that into it. So it is asking what the dreams are. This is what it's about. What difference you want to make in the world.
Right.
And then actually, as you mentioned, I worked with John Gatto, and one of the things he taught us all was that schooling and education are different, not even closely related. They are on opposites of the spectrum. And so I kind of take his quotes and I add to it, because this is what we're all doing. We're all standing on the shoulders of giants, and everybody in the past was a big contributor to our new reality. And so as we do our good work, we're able to contribute to the new reality in 5 years and 10 years and 50 years. So Gatto's quote, which I kind of borrowed and added to, was that education is what you do to yourself to create a good life. Okay.
Right.
And schooling is what somebody else does to you for their own benefit, for their own agenda. And we can go down the rabbit holes if you want on some of those things, but it's such a dark thing to look at the history of schooling. And as you mentioned, I published the first volume of that book with John Gatto, and we have 2 more volumes in the pipeline. But it's unbelievable to see why school was created. Put it this way, it's not to help your child maximize their full potential. It's to create obedient clerks, workers, consumers, and soldiers. Okay, as crazy as that sounds,
that's the Prussian model, though. That is the Prussian model was intended for that. You know, you're talking about mass schooling to produce a specific product, and the children are going into it. That's why we sometimes call it factory schooling, because they're going in and they're like on a conveyor belt, or like on an assembly line. And when they come out at the end of their 13 years or whatever, they're a product. So the child is not the consumer of the education. They're the product of it.
Yes.
And he said that as well. There is a child.
Peace and love to you guys. My friends are leaving on air flight, so a journey.
Oh,
so
okay.
Say goodbye. Thank you. We'll see you, brother.
And then, you know, do you find that you meet parents who, when you explain this to them, they sort of think, yeah, you're right? Or do you find a lot of parents who are really resistant to the idea that schooling, as they understand it to be, is actually a bad idea?
Good question. I find it's about 80% of children and parents who I talk to, they're like, yeah, school wasn't fun for me. I didn't like it. And they're not maybe as like extreme as us, as we're like, you know, I felt something was deeply wrong when I had to get permission to use the bathroom or urinate or defecate. I mean, for 12 years, I mean, it was terrible, right? I was like, this something's not right here. I could
Am I in prison? What happened?
This is exactly it. And I felt that. And then, so once I met Gatto and Charlotte Isserbit, it was like, I know exactly what's going on because I felt what's going on. So anyways, 80% of people are like, yeah, it sucked, whatever, you know. And I would say about 20% of people are like, I had a good experience at school. And I said, that's amazing. I'm shocked, but I'm happy for you. If you loved it all and you have no complaints about government 12 years compulsory attendance and compulsory curriculum, you have no problem with that, that's okay. And for me, it's okay with you. But I, like some of us out there, had bigger questions than what is the job that I want to have for my life. And by the way, the average person has between 13 to 15 jobs in 4 to 5 different careers or different industries on their face. So, and of course, you go to college and you don't likely use that profession or that degree really for anything, even not in the same field. So, yeah, it's a shocker to know that schools and education aren't really compatible. And this is not to say that there aren't good schools out there. There's a great documentary film I invite everyone to watch. It's called Summerhill from 2008, and it's about a voluntary attendance school, a voluntary curriculum school, and this school produces amazing rock stars of humans. And they made a movie about it, and they interviewed this guy. It's been going on for 100 years. So there are good schools out there, but there's a few of them that have voluntary attendance and voluntary curriculum. I recommend you take a look at that. But then, as we stated before, education is what you do to create a good life for yourself. And this is a better question of what is a good life? Because, you know, you see really wealthy people and you say, are they really happy? And you can see poor people, but there's a lot of love in their life. And so I think there's a good medium to have abundance and to have healthy relationships and healthy body and these types of things. And so when I consult with parents, this is where I begin. I say, time out, mom and dad. What do you desire for your child? You know, let's start there. Can we start there? That you'd never have that question asked in 12 years over the last 3 or 4 generations, except there are some places, and Gatto is one of those good teachers. I know there's good teachers out there. My mom is a retired public school teacher. Okay. And I have family members who are working the system now. I know there's amazing, beautiful souls in the system, and they try to change it from the inside and do all these things. And And maybe there's hope, to do that for
Right.
me. So I don't have hope in that area, mainly because I saw what Gatto did in his career and some of the research and some of what we've seen. There's another film called The Cartel from 2009 about a school, I think it was in New Jersey, lost $1 billion and nobody got fired and there's no accountability. This is a huge extortion fee. And it's like, well, what about the kids? They're like, what kids? We're making $200,000, whatever. And it's like, well, we're teaching them that they have a penis and be a girl and a vagina be a boy. What's the problem with that? It's like, inject them with experimental products and drugs with a manufacturer have no liability. What's wrong with that? It's like, are you guys kidding me? Right? So we're kind of at the end of the whole game, and we want to empower parents to remove them. I think that's one reason we're having the conversation. Many of you guys know what the problems are out there, but you and I are visionaries who want to create solutions to solve those problems, and we're doing that because we're standing on the shoulders of giants, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And so I think your first question was so beautiful, is what education should be like. It should be exciting and fun. It should be pleasurable, enjoyable. Doesn't mean there aren't challenges. Doesn't mean you still face difficulties and self-doubt and all these challenges, but at least it's on a voluntary basis and you're choosing your own journey rather than somebody else choosing your journey. And then, you're 18 and they say, here, what are you gonna do with your life? And you're like, what are you talking about? This is not my life. You have been training me, and I've been sitting here like a very passive participant, but life is exciting. This is an adventure, and you don't have to be crazy like me out there speaking out and doing stuff. But introverts and artists and the other people that have great gifts, they enjoy their life in silence or by themselves or with people. It doesn't matter, but you get to make that choice. And that's why I think freedom of choice is probably the most important issue of our lifetime, especially when it comes to children, parental rights, and choosing what you do with your child. And it's an absolute travesty that parents think the state has any authority over their children at all. And as you know, this is a very serious mental condition called statism, which is the belief that
it is a serious mental condition. I'm so glad you put it that way.
It is, it's a belief that the state has authority, more authority than you have over yourself without your consent. And as Larkin Rose showed us, it's a religion. It actually is a religion. And the University of Hawaii showed us democide is the most deadliest, the greatest harm to humanity. Democide, death by government, more than genocide. This is like, so we know we're on the right side of history, Deb, and that's what's exciting. We want to let these young people know that as well, is that you're going to be okay. You're going to be fine as long as you understand that this state has an agenda. Many of you know about Agenda 21 and 2030 and 20, Healthy People 2050 and all these things. They're trying to put us in a global totalitarian state, and we're saying, no, thank you. We're going to exit your system entirely. We send you peace and love, but we're not going to put our kids through the same torture that we went through. We're actually going to liberate them. We're actually going to remove them. And it's a great philosophy, which I like. It's called exit and build. And so we exit their systems and we build what we want. And then, as you stated, I am the principal of Valor Academy. It's a virtual school, but I have two main concepts that I try to help parents understand. One is the world is the classroom.
Yes.
It's everywhere. Okay. It is not a building. Okay. You don't have to go to college. You don't have to, create school in your house. It is inside your house. It's outside your house. It's at the library. It's at the restaurant. It's at the grocery store. It's at the family reunion. It's everywhere. It's at the concerts. It's everywhere. It's everywhere's going on is learning. You can't stop learning. And the second concept is that anything or anybody you can learn from can be a teacher. So yes, it can be a human that you hire, that you bring into your house. It can be a neighbor. It could be some retired guy across the street. It could be the retirement home. It could be the people in the library. It could be a device. It could be some plants out there. It could be the hardware store employee making minimum wage. So it's this opening up of what you see as the classroom, opening up what you see as the teacher. And the sooner you can get there, the more enjoyable this process will be, because you shouldn't be worried if your child's 8 about getting them into Harvard or having them be a success at whatever, let them be 8. And remember, 8, you don't have any worries. You're just playing with stuff and having a great time. And as they get older, maybe 10, 12, and who knows, maybe around there, they start a business. They want to be interested in money. So you have that conversation. But it should be enjoyable.
Thomas Edison started his first business, I believe, when he was like just an early teenager, maybe like 13 or something. I'm trying to remember from the from the Edison Ford estate. But, as I'm listening to you talk, one thing that really strikes me is how many words we are repeating that sound like some of the words they're using in the education establishment, but it just highlights the fact that everything that is school right now is upside down. So, for example, the current claim is they're trying to liberate children and that they're teaching social justice to liberate them. It's a liberation education, when in fact, you can't liberate someone by conscripting them to show up at a building and then teaching them a specific worldview, not really allowing any deviation from that worldview or to ask questions, making it actually bad. Like you're a bigot, you're a racist, or a hater, you're this or that. If you ask the kind of questions kids would have, but it's perfectly okay if we violate the natural innocence and boundaries of a child. You mentioned being 8 years old. Well, you're only 8 once. And part of that is you're only 8. So in other words, childhood is this very short period of time in our lives where we're not miniature adults, yet we're hardwired to learn. We're like little sponges. Like, I want to learn. Even the kid who's not outwardly super curious is still hardwired to learn at their pace. But if we're going to impose or project adult needs and adult values and adult agendas onto the little 8-year-old, you're you're not liberating anything. You're imprisoning their mind. You're imprisoning their psyche, their emotions in a sort of a pseudo adult space, and they stop growing. They can't grow. They can only grow. It would be like taking a plant and bonsaiing it, And that's basically what I feel like is that they say the word liberate, they say the word justice, they say the words, all the words, but they actually do the opposite. And then we say the word liberate and we're like, no walls, no specific curriculum, none of these agendas. The adults know their place and they don't go and tell the kid, think this, feel this. Oh, and P.S. you are this. Your identity is X. Like that. How is that liberation from anything? That sounds like you're not only taking a physical prison, I get an emotional prison, an intellectual prison, a cognitive prison. Like it's like all these little restrictions and the kid's like all bound up like this.
That's correct. Yep. No, I'm glad you brought up the word prison because that's what Gatto called it, on his books. And I think the accurate phrase, like true definition is a day prison. Okay, like you said, the not getting a drink of water and go to the bathroom and stuff, that is by definition a prison because they will never, ever be in that same situation again unless they go to actual prison, right? Like at a job, college, you're allowed to go to the bathroom, allowed to get a drink of water. It is absurd that parents have been sitting around for 100 years. And that's what really got my attention when Gatto said, is there an idea more radical than sending your child to be educated by total strangers who you know nothing about to work on their mind without your supervision for a period of 12 years? He said, this has got to be the most radical piece of social engineering in history. So you think about that, it's like, that is true because I would never hand my child off to a babysitter that I didn't know, but that's exactly what parents are doing, handing their child off to teachers that they don't know. And he says, well, people say, well, the state knows who these people are. And they don't know who these people are, right? It's like people can do whatever they want to become a teacher and get tenured, and then you can't get fired. And look up something called rubber rooms up there in New York and other places where they can't fire these teachers.
Where they warehouse the bad teachers and they can't fire. They're paying them to sit there on their phones all day long.
30 to 40, 50, 60, 70K even to do nothing because they can't get fired because of the union. By the way, the National Education Association is the largest political force or union in the country, over 3 million paying members. And this is the teachers of the compulsory school system. So it is a day prison. And also, we lean on Gatto so much. He said, if the system could have been reformed by now, it would have. So there is no hope for me in changing the system. Again, this is not to denigrate anybody who wants to change the system, but most important is your child. So if you are watching this as a mother or father, like any of us, we're like, I'm not trying to change the system. I'm trying to empower my child right now. And that is by giving them the truth, giving them the facts so that they can decide whatever life they want to live. If they want to believe that there's 57 genders as they're an adult, that's fine. But as a 6, 5, 7, 8, 9, to tell kids that there's more than 2 genders, that is serious mind control. That is a crime. Forcing the children to attend a school they don't want to attend is a crime. The payment of the school system, the property tax system, that is a crime. So the more we're accurate with our language and say, this is a day prison, this is a criminal operation that generates over $700 billion a year conservatively, which makes it one of the top business enterprises in the country. And who's suffering the most? The children. Who is benefiting the most? The giant corporations that are getting all these contracts, the food, the supplies, the clothing, the architecture, the buses. I mean, this is a major,
it's the
major
education industrial complex. I mean, if you really put a fine point on it, that's what it is. And, you know, the other thing that is so irksome to me is when people say we need to take it back. And I'm like, you never had it. It was never yours. So when people say it's broken, education is broken, I'm like, no, it's working perfectly. It's working exactly as it was designed to work. It just so happens that they, you know, the software they installed on the operating system. So like they built this giant operating system called education, and they just updated the software of like Tyranny 1.0, Tyranny 2.0. And now we're at like, you know, Tyranny version, I don't know, 100 something. Okay. And it's got some new name now, I'm sure, like Utopia is the new operating, whatever. But we're at the version now of the software where people are looking at it and saying, wow, that's off the rails crazy. And I'm like, I got to be honest with you. From some people's point of view, 20 years ago, it was off the rails crazy. And from their point of view, 20 years before it was off the rails crazy. You're just kind of just getting to where like the Overton window, that's what we're dealing with, but it's working exactly as designed in service to the state. It's part of why they're coming down so hard now with this complete lunacy is that with technology opening the world to us and making it possible for us to interact with each other as individuals more than ever before, they have to figure out how to control that to their best advantage. That was tough, but they figured it out. And then they're trying to figure out how to make sure the schools continue their role of producing drones that can, and then so the technology companies are making sure that they keep the drones, follow the laser light. Come on, kitty, follow the laser light. All right, there we go. Thank you. But they're creating the little drone following the laser light. And what we're saying is, why do you want your child to grow up and be a drone? When all you have to do is walk out the door. Just go. Just there you go. Walk out the door. That's it. Go.
Yeah. And the fear that moms have and dads have, and anybody, you know, taking over the education of a child, is that you have to be a teacher, right? You have to be up there and replicate everything that Mrs. Jones did to you in the 7th grade. No. And it's like, that's absolutely what you don't have to do.
So mom has to bore you to death. Is that what it is? And restrict your bathroom trips.
Right. For 12 years.
Sorry.
Yeah. So this is a huge one. So mom and dad, don't consider yourself, as we're talking about homeschooling. So homeschooling is one step in the 4 steps, which I call the 4 steps of homeschooling or empowered education. One is school at home. This is step 1, where you, mom and dad, try to duplicate science at 9 a.m. and math at 10 a.m. And I'm get in front of the teacher and the whiteboard, and I'm the teacher. Okay, that's school at home. You want to get past that phase as soon as possible. The next phase is deschooling, where you are allowed freedom to decompress. You allow your child, I should say, to have the freedom, because for every year they're in compulsory school, they're losing their own connection with themselves. They're losing that love of learning, that passion, that enthusiasm, that freedom. So I'm going to give them a month of free time to play video games, to sleep, to whatever, and let them, just like you shape a bottle of soda, before you can drink the soda, you open it up and let all the pressure be released. You got to let that pressure be released from your child. And then you move on to homeschooling itself. How I define homeschooling is when a leader creates an atmosphere where personalized learning can occur. And yes, mom and dad, you are that leader. Doesn't mean you got to do anything or be extra what you're not. You're a leader. Accept that fact that you are a mother, you are a father, you are another being in life. And there's this amazing thing called birth and creation and conception. And this whole cycle is beautiful. And you are a leader. And you are, in fact, I would dare to say, Deb, that you are a queen. And the men out there are kings. And this is one of the most empowering things. You are that leader. So what type of atmosphere would you create to empower personalized learning? A respectful, peaceful atmosphere, just like you and I have created right now digitally. Mom and dad, you would create that, you know, in your own surrounding and world and home. And then the 4th step is the apex and the ideal, which I call the 100% self-directed learning. Also, unschooling is a common term, or child-led learning, whatever you want to call it. But we are self-directed learners now, and there's even that phrase in the literature, the education, journals and such, is a self-directed executive function is what it's called. So that's right. Presidents, CEOs, kings, queens, the chosen ones, the stars, the indigo children, the bright beings, whatever you identify yourself as, you're significant and important, and so is your child. And so you want to get them to that self-directed learning phase immediately. But first they have to go through this phase of like, what are my five senses? What is it to hear and to smell and see and taste and touch? Like, these are sensory modes right here. This is a very important thing. They try to, get you reading at 6 p.m. or age 6. And they don't even know how to, maintain their urine or fecal matter in their body, right? Like, they're dealing with this sensory stuff. So give them time, mom and dad, to read. If they learn to read at 10 or 12 or 14 or 16, that's okay. The most important thing is that you maintain that love of learning, maintain that joy, which is inside of them. That if you look at many of the mothers and fathers out there, it's gone because life is hard, and, money and relationships and health and everything that happens in life, it beat us down. But if you see a true educated person, they're still excited and enthusiasm in life at age 60, at 70, at 90, all the way to life, because they realize that they don't know much about this experience, this mystery of life. And it's very fun to read, to learn, to go try new things and experience this whole life. It's like, so right. This is one of the key things to get through, I think, is to be a self-directed learner. If your parents aim for that, I think, you don't have to worry about anything.
I think where parents are nervous is that self-directed learning, if you're starting with your child at the very beginning, okay, and you've got a kid and, you had the child, they never went to preschool, you're doing everything at home. And, it's easier to talk to parents about self-directed learning because they've observed their child. They're closer to the child is younger. This concept resonates because they're watching their young child, like, try to tie their shoes or try to put their own socks on and things. And they're a little closer to it. When I've spoken to people whose kids have either gone to some school and they've got to de-school them and get them out, or they are the type of person who is a very structured person, is a structured household, is a structured personality. And let's face it, a certain amount of personality is inherited. I mean, a certain amount of who you are in your mindset. And so they like, or they need a little bit more structure than the typical unschooling environment would have. So they get very nervous and they get very skittish. So I find it's also important to explain to them that self-directed learning can look structured, meaning, it's not just necessarily a free-for-all day. You can still decide that, the morning we're going to spend outside, or the morning mom needs to work with her job. So I'm going to set you guys up with these crafts, or, this in the yard, or, there's certain things that you guys can do, like how Montessori is. Sometimes, like, there's some stuff you can play with over here, or there's some books you can read, there's some activities you can do where it's learning, and they kind of choose amongst them, but it's still got a little bit of structure. Or you could even take it to another level and have them go to, like, the discovery place and be in a little group or club with some other little learners that are doing some science things. And that lends some structure to it, but it's something the kid is really interested in. So I guess what I'm saying is, I hope that people in the audience, when we talk about self-directed, they aren't thinking like what schools are doing right now. This big fad is called student-led learning, but within the factory model. So what they do is they go, here's the lesson, figure it out. And that's really unfair because the kid knows they're going to get a grade. They're going to be evaluated. Their peers are watching them. It's a competitive environment, but they tell them not to compete. But, don't ask a question because you're supposed to figure it out. And what we're saying is kids will figure things out, but you got to expose them. You got to give them the tools they need to be able to figure it out. So if you're going to be doing self-directed, you do need to be prepared to be at least a mentor, a guide, a facilitator, connect them with other adults. If you're not confident, if you're like, my kid is a little math, like they love math, I'm a terrible math student, what do I do? Then, okay, that's fine. Being self-aware is okay. So maybe, maybe a relative or a friend or a tutor or some college kid nearby or something. So in other words, the thinking outside the box is what you have to do. You don't have to be all things. And you also don't have to be totally hands-off either, because your kid's going to need you. There'll be some things they're awesome at and some things they're curious about, but they're a little hesitant because it doesn't come naturally. That's okay. you don't have, you structure it the way it's best for your individual child and your family life. And what you get out of it, what I keep trying to explain to people is you get this beautiful organic thing called a childhood. Okay. And a family, so that the kid's childhood is within your family unit and it's not separate and apart. Like they're having their childhood 8 hours a day over there. That's the worst part. Like, to me, that's the worst part. And all of school today seems geared towards disassociating and alienating rather than integrating, alienating the child from themselves, alienating them from their parents, alienating them from any concept of self-awareness or personal values or anything like that. And what we're talking about is, I don't want anyone to feel like it's aimless. It's integrating. We're talking about allowing the child at their pace within the safe and loving framework of your family to integrate knowledge and arrive at it at the pace that works for them. And you're a facilitator, I think, in that regard.
Right. No, I'm glad you said that. Yes, because that is part of the other half of that. Anything you can learn from can be a teacher. And instead of seeing yourself as a teacher, yes, you are a facilitator. You are a coach, a guide, a learning partner. Whatever you call yourself, don't pretend that you have to know all subjects and be all knowing, because every genius knows, as Einstein said, every genius admits that he or she knows nothing. And Socrates said a quote similar to that. So this is like acknowledging the vastness of knowledge out there and how we have maybe this much, right? The Library of Alexandria burned. So like that was a big blow to humanity, but like, Isaac Newton still made it and Tesla still made it. So there's some great things in our past that we stand on those people. We still don't know what electricity is. We know what electricity does, but we're still learning about it. So all these new things can be an inspiring opportunity for your child. And this is why you, mom and dad, one of the great opportunities you have is first to see yourself not as the teacher, but then allow yourselves to learn with your child. They will help reinvigorate your curiosity, your questions.
Oh, that is so true.
Right. And
that is so true. So true. And
right.
I'm sorry, I did want to bring this up because I know nothing about Summerhill, so I'm kind of unaware of it. But you mentioned Summerhill, and they're saying it was kind of progressive and more in line with like kind of what they're doing in the schools now. And the suggestion is read Robert Peel. I just want to say, Christine, I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, David, you are actually suggesting that parents look to people with expertise in various things like apprenticeships and finding people in the community, and that, your kids can learn from people who have expertise. I mean, it's not like ruling it out. I think we're just saying, because I absolutely agree that people who are passionate about their subject that they're interested in it can be contagious. And so when my eldest daughter came home to homeschool, again, she was homeschooled in Gilder grades and then went to school for a while, and she wanted to learn Latin. I went out and searched for the program and the people who were teaching it, who were archaeologists who learned Latin so they could do their archaeology, and they got PhDs. And it was like, they were just passionate about classics and ancient, study of ancient world and everything. So they ended up being great teachers because they were experts in that field, not of the like, oh, I'm an expert. It was more like, this is so cool, let me show you this. And I could never have done that job. I couldn't have done it myself, but I could do the job of finding them. And so I just hope I'm right that you're not saying anything contradictory to that, correct?
No, Summerhill's one. And just to Christine's point, it's not progressive like a status. I would say, if anything, A.S. Neal, the founder of the school, is more of a voluntarist. So the whole idea is that you get to choose, right? We were just at a big freedom festival at campgrounds, and here's what it works. People offer their classes. Whoever wants to show up, they show up. And that's what they do at Summerhill. There's a school called Acton Academy, which is blowing up around the country. There's a school called Agile Learning Models, North Star Self-Directed Team Learning Centers. You have Sudbury schools, right? So your mom and dad just want to be, the reason I mentioned Summerhill and those schools I just mentioned is because there's voluntary attendance schools out there. But right now you have 50 million children who are in a school by compulsion, coercion, threats, and intimidation. That's what CPS is all about. That's what the truancy offer is all about. So if you get into the statist model, of what is happening, just like this. Imagine that McDonald's was in charge of the school system. What would happen to the curriculum? Do you think they're going to be talking about flags and war and, ignorance of economics and taxation and all those things, which happens in the state school? No. You'll learn about how processed meat is really healthy. You'll have pictures of the founders of the presidents on the wall. And then the height and the achievement of success would be for you to graduate with a diploma from McDonald's school so that we can go work for McDonald's. And if we're really lucky and we get chosen, we can own a McDonald's franchise in the future. Wouldn't that be amazing? Now, I say that with some sarcasm because that's what any organization does. They're always about training the next. Look what the NFL and Major League Baseball does. They have little children's leagues, one in California called Junior Giants, right? Yeah, we're helping the kids out. Yeah, you're also branding them and persuading them to be a fan of your sport in the future. So this is why the state wants to have children as young as 3 or 4 in their control. I mean, the state would take the baby out of the womb if you would hand it over. So this is where mom and dad, what your opportunity is, I believe, is to stop believing the state has authority over you and you have authority over yourself. And learning is fun. How much curriculum and how much structure was needed for your child to learn to speak, for your child to learn to walk? What was that curriculum? No, it's love. It is love is the curriculum and the world is the classroom. Right. So when you provide that unconditional love for your child, yay, mommy, daddy. And then once you start getting into, you put them in the schools, now you're worried about their grades. And I said before, they're not a piece of meat. This is a soul. This is a being. This is your child. This is the most beautiful young person in the world to us. And so they should not be graded. If they want to know if they're succeeding at something, look at the results. So when you're doing art or business, or there's different, what's called KPIs, which is a key productivity indicator, not grades. Nobody cares about your grades. This is a business. As I mentioned, $700 billion. What about the college business? That's probably another $200 to $300 billion. That your child is the product, and that's why they give them $300,000 of loans or $100,000 of loans they can't pay back for 20 or 30 years. So it's about, yes, I agree. It's about the voluntary choosing of the classes. And it can be one of those models, or you can make up your own model. But the public school is burning, and parents are worried that their child's not going to get ahead in life. You have to get your child out of the burning building first. That is one of my invitations for you. And if you can't get them out of the burning buildings, then do what Gatto did and talk about the public school as a subject of teaching, of instruction in the school. Why are we sitting here in this school? Why does the bell ring every 40 minutes? Ask all these questions. Why are they getting rid of music? Why are they getting rid of art? Could it be that the hyper wealthy predator psychopaths who are behind this stuff want to enslave your child, chip them, and put their medical and financial and personality stuff on a chip and get rid of all the people that are going to be descenders and champions and courageous winners like us and you and everybody watching this? This is a big game, and the school is the bridge to get it. Without the public schools, they can't have a global totalitarian state. And with it, it's coming. And humanity is bifurcating. In my experience, the last 5 years, I've seen people going more to freedom, people going more to slavery. And you're welcome to choose whatever you want, but I'm certain that your unborn children and all your progeny for, infinity, they want freedom. They don't want to be chipped. They don't want to be enslaved. And so the school system is used as a tool. And remember, the word education comes from the root of educo, is to pull from within. Your child's a born genius already. They're already a genius. And so your job is to not dumb them down by putting in the school system, to not put your programming on them, but to put love on them, to put this beautiful thing called trust on the table, where you put your trust out there, and maybe they do something wrong and they break your trust, but you keep giving it to them. You keep giving it to them. And eventually they say, man, my mom loves me. My dad loves me. I can trust them, because the family is the unit which is stopping the globalist takeover right now. And some people are losing. Some families are getting broken up. I'm really very sad to see people fighting over coercion and drugs and violation of natural autonomy. This is a very sad thing because nobody taught us about the moral code and the moral compass, which is how do you know what's right from wrong? And so that's why I focus on more character training as well in the curriculum.
Well, and that's the thing is they claim they're doing character training with all the social emotional learning, but they're not. They're focusing all exclusively on emotions rather than principles and values. And kids are, kids especially are sort of naturally sort of emotional. They're more emotional than they are rational. They get more rational as they age until, about 26, you're finally fully capable of adult reason, but not if it's been interrupted, not if somewhere along the line, adults came in there and told you to hang out an emotion and told you your feelings were facts, your feelings are valid, and that the outside world should validate those feelings and all that. You're actually going to be stunted. It's a kind of cognitive retardation. And I don't mean that in the, the sense that people are going to come down. Don't use that word. I mean, slowing down and holding back. And, I feel compelled to keep saying this because I know there are people who've watched me and heard me say that I'm a big fan of classical schooling. So, and classical schooling is obviously not unschooling, but it also doesn't need specifically to happen in a building, and it shouldn't be compulsory. So where we're completely 100% aligned is that compulsory schooling is evil. And the voluntary model is the only model that there should be because kids are different, just like adults are different.
Yes.
And so the beauty of a voluntary model is that, what would school be like if the only people who showed up are the ones who wanted to be there? How much better, even the horrible, horrible school that it is, wouldn't it at least be more peaceful and quiet and people are at least trying to learn? But, if everybody's forced in there, you've got all kinds of problems. So if you have a voluntary school and the kids who like, for example, the Acton model, or the kids who like the Summerhill type of model or whatever, they're going to that and they're thriving and they're doing well. Far be it for me to sit there and say, well, that's not a good model. I don't like that model. Okay. Are they voluntarily there? Are they happy there? Are they thriving there? Are they becoming their best selves? Do they come home every day and go, I learned this amazing thing and I'm so excited to learn more tomorrow? Then that's the model for you and your child. Okay. The beauty of having this educational freedom is you and your family and your children, whatever, you can sit and try. I've known families that have like 2 or 3 kids and they're in different models. They're like, one is totally unschooled and just like doing the thing. Okay. The other one loves and appreciates the classical model of I'm doing Latin at this time and I'm doing math at this time. They need it. They want it. They crave it. They thrive in that environment. And a third one is maybe doing something else entirely. Okay. So people are different. Your kids, even in the same family, are individuals. The more you can customize that around who they actually are, not who you wish they were or whatever, I think the better off they're going to be. So I guess I just want to say I'm sort of model agnostic as far as the modality of learning that your child is going to choose and thrive in. I just want it to be voluntary. Like my number one thing is at all times it should be voluntary. Even if you choose something where they do grading, like people have asked me, what's your idea of grading? I said, well, I hate arbitrary grading and I hate grading where it's like you're being judged against other kids. You're never going to be judged against other kids that way or other people that way. When you go for a job, maybe your qualifications, but it's not going to be literally, that way. So it really should be more about, did you do better today than you did before? And the goal should be helping the child improve their own capabilities and setting a certain goal for them, not on a curve compared to the other 20 people in the room and all that. Like having rubrics, showing them where they can go. I don't have a problem with that. But I don't like the, letter grade, you're this and you're that. That to me is counterproductive.
That's right.
That's my assessment anyway.
Yep. 100%. The 100% voluntary is a beautiful school. And like I said, however they're doing it, your child, as long as they choose to be there. I've had clients where we started homeschooling for, 6 months or a year and my child wants to go back to school. I'm like, well, that's up to them. Again, of course, mom and dad got to maybe do some protection of the child's mind, but sometimes kids like school and then they really hate it in high school or they really hate it in junior high school, but 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, they're like, I got to see my buddies. Well, the good news is that when you pull them out, they can still have buddies. They're just not going to be forced to be around all these other same age kids because that's not reality. We're different ages in life. We're going to interact with different people in life. And so we should be prepared by talking with different people in life from the beginning and talking to people, even if they're younger, and they're a little bit naive or innocent or ignorant,
Yeah.
you respect the human, you respect the young person. That's why when the kid is 3 years old or 2 and like they're trying to help you clean the house or something, and they come and they make the house worse, they grab the broom, but they say, me do it myself, I can do it, let me help, like they want to do it. They don't have the skills, the experience, or competency, but they have the will. And then when you start saying mean things to your child, you can't do it, you always mess it up, you're programming your child. This is why the first 6 or 7 years, you want to speak championship language into the child, in my opinion. Love language, confidence language, truth language. I'm not saying overly praise them. Sometimes even praise can be counterproductive, but you do want to notice them. You do want to let them know that you see them and that you respect them. And of course, there's some beliefs that says, well, the child should respect the parent. Well, the parents brought the child into life, and the child didn't choose to be here. So it's actually the parents' responsibility to let that child know that they are loved and that you were intentional.
Well, be someone worth respecting. Why would somebody think about why you respect other people that are adults, okay? Because they respect your boundaries, they listen when you speak, they respond to what you said, not with what they want you to hear. So in other words, like and I'm not saying treat your child as an equal. I'm simply saying behave as somebody who respects their individuality. Like they're a separate person from you. They're not your miniaturized self. They're not the child you wish you'd been. They came into this world like with like, I won't say destiny, but like maybe destiny. I don't know. They're a different person than you. And a lot of people, I think, forget that. I think they have kids and it sort of like becomes like a fashion accessory, or, like it's like a pet or something. And they forget that this is not either a miniature adult or a pet that you control. And what I would also say is, if a kid says, I want to go back to school, the trick on the parent side is find out why. Try to get to the bottom of what is really going on, because there's work for you to do there. There really shouldn't be something that you can't replicate that is good of the school outside the school. There can't be something, even if there's a specific individual that they liked at the school, you can make that happen outside the school, but there's really nothing else. If you had to, maybe you find out, I really liked eating lunch in the cafeteria. Who knows? Maybe it's like something goofy like that, or I liked recess. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, maybe you figure out how to organize a recess or PE. There are homeschool PE classes. You figure out what it is that the kid is missing, and then you set about trying to make it work. So it's not just pull them out. You are going to have to do some work. I call it like parenting, deliberately parenting on purpose, whatever you're going to have to step it up a notch. And they've lulled us into all these generations of factory schooling. They've lulled us into this expectation that we just drop our kids off and go have adult lives while they're doing their thing. And so, yes, it's a different paradigm. It's parenting a completely different way, but I don't like hearing I can't, or I don't like it. Well, the kid wanted to go back to school. It's like, okay. And what if they said, I want to stay up until midnight every night, or I want to, eat Twinkies for breakfast, or, it's your job to recognize what ultimately is best for them. You obviously didn't want them there for a reason. So try to recreate the good thing in their life. And if you can't recreate it somehow, then, it's still your decision. It's still ultimately your decision. I wouldn't just let the kid decide. That I wouldn't do, especially a very young kid. And in high school time, if they're a teenager and they're really giving you a hard time, I mean, we just talked about voluntarism. We certainly don't want to be hypocrites and say, we're not going to let our, 15 or 16-year-old who's now a more rational being, even if they're wrong, like they're going to do stuff we don't like. Let's face it. And if they're like, no, mom, I want to try high school, I want to go to high school, we might have to let go, because otherwise we're hypocrites and saying you should be voluntarily doing what you want to do. My guess is, though, they might do it for a year and be like, all right, that wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And maybe I'm wrong, but I think if you really want to teach the lesson of live your independent life and do what you want, you might have to let them at that point, but not when they're little, because then they really need you. I think they really need you to make those kind of decisions.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, some of the sex ed stuff is atrocious and might not be on the kids' radar. And they're like, yeah, I want to go back because Susie and Johnny are there. And you're like, Yeah, but they're telling you there's 57 genders and you can be a boy, all these things. It's like, so yeah, you might have to make some parental, protection decisions. And then, yeah, around, high school, I would definitely say the reins, the sooner you can give them the reins to their own life, the better. It might not be age 6 or 7, but
Right.
like, yeah, 13, 14, 15, these are ages when people were used to get married back in the day. This is when you would leave school and go out in the working world. The compulsory school system started from age 9 to age 12 for 3 months out of the year, and then slowly went down below age 9 and above 12 and for more months out of the year. And, Gatto wrote a lot about this and directed us to primary sources, from the 1920s, teens, 30s, if you want to know about really what's going on in the school. So that's why I'm so like firm against it. And maybe you two as well. I'm like, man, this school system is really messing kids up. And,
it really
to the other point about the kids making decisions, they are the most vulnerable and dependent human on the earth. They're helpless. If this is let's say we're in a bad adult relationship, we're allowed to leave that relationship, or a bad job, I can leave the job, or, whatever. But in a family, the kid for the first 12 or 14 years is like fully dependent on you for food, shelter, and emotional support. And like, this is essential. Like, we recognize that we have the power, and of course we can flex the power as parents, but it's better to earn their trust and respect by being a trustworthy, honest, respectful human. And again, that's looking in the mirror first. And this is hard. It's easy to blame the outside world, and there's a lot of stuff to blame. The politicians are terrible, right? They're screwing a lot of people. But what can I do about it? How am I contributing to that? And if I'm handing my child to the political state and I'm complaining about the state, you do want to take a look at what really you value. Is it comfort and convenience, or is it doing what you think to believe is true and right? And also, mom and dad, what you're doing is you're breaking generational curses or generational trauma, generational enslavement. What we're on, I think, Deb, is the evolution of human consciousness, from just like it went from the monarchy to the constitutional republic. And now that's become a slave model of itself through legalism and legalese. And now it's evolving to individual self-ownership. And this is what I think is one of the most important questions for parents to demonstrate a model, is that your child does own their body and you own your own body. And so this is, for a short time, mom and dad, in my opinion, you are stewards or custodians of the sacred trust of ownership or protection of your child's body, because they can't protect themselves at age 5, right?
No.
They need help. They need support. But at some point, they will begin to leave your home to flex their responsibility muscles. And so it's a fine dance, but this is what we do in the Homeschool Leader Facebook group and other interviews and these types of things and consulting, so that you can realize how badly your mind was treated in these compulsory school systems. And when I listen to Gatto and remind myself, all the work and hours, and this guy put in, over 30 hours or 30 years, maybe 40 years of deep research while he was a school teacher. He was doing the research like in the late 60s and 70s. And I asked him, I said, John, I said, why did you put so much time into research in the history of the school system? And he says, I had to know for myself, because I was in the schools for 30 years and I was looking, and it says, it looks like somebody designed these schools to prevent learning from happening. So, he wanted to like resolve the question for himself. And sure enough, he did. And he found all these things. So, mom and dads out there, don't think that you have to, take it all on or solve it and resolve it in one weekend or anything like this. But it's been a long process of trying to understand what is an education, what is a schooling, what do you desire for your child, who is my child, and what do they really need me for? Do they need me to whip them like they're an animal and, we're trying to make a race horse out of them or something? No, this is a conscious being, and they're here. And I would say each child has a destiny, has a beautiful purpose that maybe God or source or nature ordained, or they do it for themselves. Whatever it is, when you bring a newborn baby into the world, you're saying, this is the champion. This is our future. This is our legacy. This is a winner. This is a beautiful young boy, young girl You don't say this
Yep.
is a loser. You don't say this is someone who's not going to do anything. This is everything. This is how you become immortal, in effect, through your genetics or through your spirit or through your mind and your education. And people don't think about this. And they're like, success itself, you know, it's like, well, what is success? This is a good question. How come I never heard that? And your child will not hear that in school as well. How come your child won't learn about goal setting in school when that's like the most important and powerful skill?
They talk about goal setting, but it is so, they do things that drive me crazy. They talk about goal setting, and they talk about something called growth mindset. First of all, they get what growth mindset is all wrong, in my opinion. And they put a lot of pressure on kids to be happy, or to be like very pleased with themselves all the time, or to be always positive about things that are going on, or, you know, that it's like they almost make it sound virtuous to have a certain attitude and not virtuous not to. And the reality is none of us is walking around all day feeling perfectly pleased with ourselves. I talked to my guest yesterday about this, and we're teaching our kids that this is a discomfort they should never tolerate. That, you know, it's never okay to make mistakes, and, you know, like, it's okay to make a mistake, but only if you have this positive attitude about it. Well, what if you're really bummed out? What if you make a mistake, or what if something goes wrong and you just really need to have that, you know, like, sit with that for a bit? That's how it's like, well, how are you going to turn this to a positive? It gets to be like relentless. And I think if the kid is not already of a kind of plucky nature, I think that is extra pressure. So they put all this pressure on them to have a very specific mindset. They put pressure on them to set goals that are all, you know, like, you know, measurable and all these different things. And while there's a benefit to that when you're older, certainly, you know, middle school and above, maybe, okay. But they don't talk about, like what you said at the beginning, like dreams and stuff. And when it comes to the lower grades, there should really only be one goal, which is, do you know more today than you did yesterday? And when I say no, I mean, in other words, did you improve some little facet of something? Like, it's not, you don't want to stay in the same place for too terribly long, because that probably means someone's holding you back. Most kids, like you pointed out, they're going to go at least in one direction. They might go down a rabbit hole, stay there for a while, and they go down another rabbit hole. But if they're hanging out in one place learning wise, then you might need to give them a little more stimulation, that you need to give them access to more information, or take them outside, or take them somewhere else, because that can be a tendency too. I've seen kids, they learn to read, they start reading a specific kind of book, and they read like 35 or 40 of the exact same book. And people say, well, what's wrong with that? At least they're reading. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with it. And I would never suggest you force them out of it like school does. But what I would say is, you come along and say, hey, did you know there's another author, or there's these other books that are similar, but it's different. Let me show you. And let's see if you want to try one of those. And if they don't want to try it, you read it to them. But if you don't step in and expose them to newness, they might get comfortable and hang out in the same place and keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it, and become very happy and very compliant, which school loves. School loves compliance, but they're not really growing. They're not challenging themselves. So to a certain extent, they're supposed to be a little uncomfortable. They're supposed to not know everything. They're supposed to make mistakes, and they're supposed to be left alone with that for a little bit, and not constantly made to feel better all the time, or to feel like they have to feel better all the time. So they seem to do everything inside out or backwards, to where I feel like today, if I were a kid in today's school, I would just be an anxiety ball. I would just be a constant mess of anxiety, wondering like if I had the wrong emotion at the wrong time, to the wrong degree, in the wrong place, in front of the wrong people, because they're very clear on what is the right and virtuous way to think and be and feel. And they do not seem very tolerant of different ways of thinking. Different ways of knowing is okay, but not different ways of thinking, not different ways of doing, not different ways of feeling, you know? And that's what really bothers me. It's kind of like, they just, I don't know. It's just something that I was thinking of, that when you were talking about the way they you know, you tell them they're, you know, build them up and tell them they're great, because parents, I tell them this too, like, remember your baby? Did you ever like look down at your baby and say like, oh yeah, you're a cute little oppressor. You're a very cute little oppressor who needs to like remake the world and fix all the problems that we adults made. And, you know, the world's going to end in 12 years because of global warming, and you need to go out and fix that little one, because otherwise bad things. I mean, they're like, hi, you're 5, but the world's going to end in 12 years. Like, they do this stuff to these kids, and they have a growth mindset. It's all good. Can you imagine? You're a kid. You're like, so have a growth mindset, but everything is awful. Got it.
Right.
Backwards. No, everything
Right.
is amazing. And it's okay if you don't feel great today.
Right.
Tomorrow's another day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're allowed to be human and have emotions. And this is why, mom and dad, it's important that you express your emotions around your child. You know, if you made a mistake, apologize to the husband or wife or the child or whatever. You know, you, mom and dad, are the last line of defense for your child in this crazy system. I mean, it is a diabolical,
Totally
unacceptable system. It was 5 years ago. And as you said, 10 and 15 and 60 years ago. People are like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Well, if you look at the root cause of it all, it is the coercive attendance policy. So yeah, they're forcing you to make goals, but it's like in this parameter. Well, if you just didn't have to go to school, to their school, then they lose. The whole game is over, because now they're around mom and dad to listen to your traditions, values, morals, whatever it is. And it doesn't mean you're going to agree with all these other people pulling their kids out of the school system. You might be a Christian, you might have Muslim neighbors or whatever it is. That's not the point. The point is that your child is precious beyond measure, and nobody can make claim to your child's life except them and maybe you for a certain period of time. You know, and some of you have spiritual beliefs, so you say God owns your body. Great. That's fine too. But the state, the city, county, state, federal politicians have zero ownership claim to your body. But if you give it to them, now it's like, oh, you handed it over? Okay, I'm going to download a bunch of disempowering slave mindset to the child. Yeah, you mentioned the growth mindset. It's like, no, if you're not talking about the coercion at school, then you miss the whole point of what's going on, which is that is the number one thing. And, you know, to your point, there are good things in schools. For me, it was the sports teams. I was like, my parents required me, I get this grade level so I can play sports. And I was like, oh, I really love sports. I'm going to play it. Well, guess what, mom and dad? You can start your own sports leagues. You and 5 parents can have a meeting tonight, and you can have a whiteboard and say, here's what our problem is. We have no sports teams in the area. Great. Here's our solution. Okay, you're all going to recruit 1 parent, and I'm going to recruit 1 parent. We're going to have 10 people here next week. And we're going to have, 10 and 12 kids, and we're going to make a soccer league and a sports league, whatever it is. You don't need to wait. You don't need to ask permission. You don't need any authority. You have the authority. It's called life. It's called breath. It's called your heartbeat. It's living inside you. It's pulsating. Humanity is coming out of this 150-year crazy experiment of schooling, and they're trying to lock it down in the school system. They are doing it deliberately. They just had a world global government summit that we didn't hear about on local news, but they're trying to build this around us and enforce your child in there. And like you said, oh, mistakes, I got to feel happy. Or, I feel like the world's coming to an end. I got to be happy. It's like, no, you're alive and you're probably going to live to age 80. Okay. So look at this life and plan something out that makes you feel happy with your life and excited and motivated. And the goal should be voluntarily chosen. Right. So it's like, here's the goals you have to set. No, it's not it. It is my life. This is your life, your child's life. They get to choose.
And you talked about your academy, right? It is online, right? You're using technology. But I want to make something clear to people that when you interact with the government schools, I'm going to show it. I think it's easier if I show it than tell it, because I think you'll appreciate this as well. Picked this up the other day from a woman I've been working with, and let me see if I can find the exact thing. Oh wait, here, now I'll be able to do it. Okay. This blew my mind. Okay. Student data. Here's your little kid going off to preschool or kindergarten if it's a government run one. And, before they start, they get they have to register. So they give the government all their personal information, social, everything. Now it's going into the data cloud owned by the government. All right. This is going to be part of a long range research project done by the Department of Education that they do. It's ongoing. Then they're going to get, an ID card. They're going to have a chip in the bus that they're on. If they log into the Wi-Fi, then their phone is there. They've got this RFID thing in their card. When the teacher you get class dojo, teachers like, oh, your kid behaved well today. Oh, your kid behaved poorly today. Guess who else gets the data on how well your kid behaved that day? The government and the company that owns it, possibly in China. And so all this keeps going. I'm not going to go through every single one, but data. They are mining your kids' data and collecting so many things. And here's where it gets really creepy is here at home and at school, when they're using the technology through the government, through the school, they're actually selecting lessons. If they're interacting with some of their little electronic things they use that are companies they contract with, they're selecting them based on all the other data that they already gave. Same with the middle school questionnaires, climate surveys. They're telling them, oh, your mental health is this, take a pill. So at every point, the child is also getting back from the school education, information, counseling, and everything based on private companies and government coming together to analyze the bits of data that your child either passively or actively gave them because they're just there. And that is going to change the direction of their life and their choices. They're only going to be shown the stuff that these entities want them to be shown. Let's be very clear about that. And it's not just going to be in the school. It will follow them home. It has the Google Classroom, Google ID that they get for their Chromebook will follow them around the internet for the rest of their life, documenting everything, selling them things, showing them things, making them aware of only that information that they will be receptive to and possibly act on. They think you're acting independently. You're not. And by the time you get to be an adult, guess what? You're basically you think you're doing things of your own accord, but this data has been collected and used all the way to your adult life. And so if nothing else we're saying today is compelling to you, I hope at least, the idea of voluntarism and voluntarily choosing what your child's education is going to be, you're also voluntarily choosing who's getting your data and your kids' data and access to their eyeballs, their brain, their ears, because that's going to be out of your control, lickety split. So it's just something I want to bring up because government school equals data school.
That's right. And they're forcing it and they're coercing it and they're making learning unfun. This is one of your great opportunities too, mom and dad, is that your child loves learning already. So your job is to not screw it up. Okay. To love learning is to basically guarantee a life of success, fulfillment, and joy. Yep. And you want to really focus on that as long as they're learning, even if it's video games, even if it's stuff you think is not useful for your 10-year-old or 12-year-old to be learning, this is their life. And if they want to become a programmer, if they want to become a dancer, if they want to do all these things, go for it, because better to go for your dreams and fail than to never try and to be on your deathbed wishing and like resenting you, mom and dad, for forcing it on them. You want them to choose on their own. And then they say, you know what? It was my choice. It was my choice to become a doctor. I didn't want to become a musician, or the other way around, right? Like you want them to make that
regret
choice.
is a terrible thing. Regret is one of the worst feelings ever.
It is probably the worst other than death, I would say, to regret a life. You can regret some decisions, but a life is a whole different ballgame. And that maybe takes 10 years or 20 years of a career. And mom and dads are a lot of times resented by their kids, and you don't want that. And so we speak that you give choice to your child now. And if they're 5 years old and, they want to go back to school, maybe you hold them back or whatever it is. But, you make choices for your child. You love your child. You have more emotional, financial, physical buy-in than anybody on earth. So don't let anybody say you're not qualified to be a teacher. You created a child, you brought him here, and they're here for a big reason, I would say, to help elevate human consciousness. It feels like we're going through some major changes this year, next year, and the next decade or two, and forevermore because of technology and what we've seen lately. And it's very exciting and empowering. I wanted to mention something about curriculum before we get too late here in the chat. This is a big question about parents and what curriculum? Because, I want to homeschool. I want to pull them out. What curriculum? Well, there's hundreds of curriculum out there. I think the most important thing is that you understand that the word curriculum is a root word that comes from a path or a journey, a course. So your child is on their own path. They're on their own journey. And if they have interest, let's say in BMX bicycles, maybe you do put some BMX magazines in their room. Maybe you do invite them to go do some BMX stuff, right? So you're allowed to influence and kind of put salt in their oats if you see that there's a destiny that's going on. But this is their course. This is their path. And when I do my consulting, the parents just want a happy, healthy, independent, productive, fulfilled son or daughter, and like maybe they give them grandkids, in 20 or 30 years. Like, that's what they want. They don't want all these grades. Like people think that when you get into Harvard, that's success. Well, I've met a lot of Ivy League graduates who are sad and depressed. And even if they have a good job, their soul and their heart is not fulfilled. So you want to take a bigger look onto that. So there's about 20 different curriculums that I've created. I put in my Facebook group. One of them is called the Mistakes Curriculum. And I can go over a few more just so you have a few kind of ideas of what I share. But the Mistakes Curriculum, the whole purpose is to allow your child to make mistakes so that you can get a new understanding of mistakes, so they can have a good understanding of mistakes. In fact, if you look at the story of the billionaire founder from Spanx, that female fitness clothes, look up. It's actually on my Freedom Lovers show on YouTube, I think, and maybe it was on Education Options TV channel. But she said when she was younger, like her dad was really busy working, but like when they would have dinner together, he would ask her, "Hey, honey, what mistakes did you make this week? Or what mistakes did you make today?" And if she didn't have any mistakes, if she didn't have any mistakes, he would be like, "Oh, okay, well, hopefully you make some mistakes next week." And then after week in and week out of doing this, she finally got a new relationship with mistakes. And that wisdom of the father, which takes time sometimes, and the mother as well, you plant that seed. It doesn't take. And then eventually she's like, my father wants me to make mistakes. I'm going to go make some mistakes. So in order to make mistakes, you have to try new things. You got to do new things, learn new things.
You have to take risks. And a lot of kids today are super risk averse. They've been both adultified and infantilized at the same time.
By design.
And it's exactly, because then they're just stuck. So what other curriculum? So you're the mistakes curriculum.
That's the mistakes curriculum. The other one is the questions curriculum. I think you might have mentioned that earlier, but the goal of the questions curriculum is to ask good questions, to help your child learn to ask good questions. Because if you learn to ask a good question, the answer is halfway in the question itself. Questions are the answers in some instances. So the question curriculum, again, and then your child's going to ask you some genius question at some point. And you know what you say? You say, that's a good question. I don't know. Who could we ask? Where can we look that up? Or what can we read? What can we watch? And then that way you're giving the power to them, which is go to Google, YouTube, BitChute, Odyssey. These are called search databases, the largest in human history. You type in the question and the answer is almost there, or a form of the answer. There is political propaganda and statism that still pervades the web, but to have a good question is part of the answer. The other one, and then I'll hand it back to you, is the presentation curriculum.
Yep.
And this is public speaking is one of the highest value skills on earth, whether for an artist, for a tech, for an engineer, for somewhere in between the spectrum. So you do want your child to become a public speaker if they want, but it's a very powerful skill. So how do you do that? You allow them to speak to you when they are overflowing and bubbling with passion and enthusiasm. Even if you're in the middle of something, you have to understand that inspiration, that passion, enthusiasm is a gift from nature or source or God or something. And when they come to you with that, you recognize that. And even if you're busy, you're cooking dinner, you're doing whatever, take a 2-minute timeout, and you recognize it. You say, you know what? Tell me about your worm digging expedition, or tell me about your video games or whatever it is. And you say, and you give them rapt attention and let them just spew and let them say all the wrong words. Let them say all the wrong grammar. Worry about that stuff later. But it's the spirit of your child that they're trying to give to you as a gift.
It's the
and
trust.
If you allow them to do that, the more skills, or the more often you do that, they will develop that skill. By the time they're 8 and 10 and 12, they will be just on the fast track for success. And you can take them to farmers markets. You can take them to city councils. You can take them anywhere. And you say, Susie, what is your opinion on this? and they'll think and they'll give you their opinion, no stuttering, no shyness, no, oh, I'm afraid to be a young man or a young woman, a champion that I am. Let them be that champion. They know they're a champion. And there's one story, and I'll get back to you here. There's when there was a 3-year-old dancer on Ellen DeGeneres' show, and her mom went viral with the video, and the 3-year-old was dancing there.
Oh,
and
yeah. I think I remember that.
It's such a great clip. It's still on the web. And this 3-year-old's like dancing, have a great time, following her mom, or she's serious. She take her dancing serious, right? And then Ellen goes, so do you want to be a dancer when you grow up? And she looks at her, she says, I am a dancer. And Ellen didn't know what to do. It's like, she doesn't have to wait. Isn't that beautiful? She doesn't have to wait. Your child doesn't have to wait. If they want to be a digger, a builder, electrical guy, they can learn now. And we can talk about that here. But I love that because it's like a 3-year-old, I am a dancer. And so your child is who they are. Time is a hard concept being a child. So it's now, I am it now. I speak it. I embody that. And so these are some of the tools that I help clients and people learn with, because it's a redefining, it is a transforming of the education of success and what you're after as a mother and a father.
Yeah, it's so true, because I was struggling a little bit, to be honest with you, trying to connect with my youngest teenage daughter, who's 13. And I thought about it and I said, you know what? Okay, I tried to get into her music. I failed miserably. I mean, I was asking her questions and trying to listen to it. And she was sending me songs. She's like, hey, Mom, listen to this song. There were a couple I liked. But what I really liked is she was making something called edits. So she would take video of songs that she liked and then meld it with other songs from different artists. And she made brand new music videos that were there were combinations of the artists she liked and other artists liked. So different music. It was almost like a little movie. And I loved those the best. I was like, their songs of their own are kind of cool, but you know what I love is the creativity and the choreography, the sort of the skill that it took you to figure out that the beats on this song went along with the rhythm of their movements from this video, and that you were able to combine that into, one little thing. Like, that's amazing. I mean, she's 13. And I'm like, how did you learn that? So I'm the novice. I'm the ignoramus. I'm the one sitting there with my 13-year-old kid going, show me how you did that. That's amazing. And to see the look on her face, she's like, really? It's no big deal. I'm like, no, dude, it's a huge deal. Show me how. So she's showing me, and I'm like, do you know, like, a lot of people don't know how to do that. So I wasn't blowing sunshine either. I was able to, like, kind of get into, like, something she was doing that I would never have otherwise known about, except I was really trying. Like, what do you do? Like, what do you do for fun? Or what are you doing? And then the other thing is, she asked me, and I know this is controversial, a lot of parents are like, you shouldn't let your kids play video games. She likes this game that you play on a phone. It's called Genshin Impact. And it's really it's a role-playing game, and it's really quite elaborate and gorgeous. Like, it's beautiful scenery and all these things. I don't love that, kids get into it for like so many hours in a row. But I said to her, you know what? I really want to spend time with you. And I know you like to play this game, and you don't like to do a lot of things I like to do. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to play the game with you. And she looks at me and she's like, really? You would do that? And I'm like, well, yeah. I said, I'm just telling you right front, it's going to be comedy. It's going to be comedy gold, because I suck at this. She's like, no, you'll be good. I'll teach you. I'll show you. She was so excited. Really? You'll do this? So we're sitting there, we're like laying on our bed, and we're trying to play this game. And I'm such a spaz. It's ridiculous. I'm like walking into walls, walking into trees, not on purpose. I really suck at this game. And she's just like, Mom. And she's giggling and she's laughing and she's having so much fun. And after 2 years of not seeing our kids laugh and smile and just be like, and just feel like I can hang with my mom and I can just be happy and joyful. She wasn't, most of the time that I was playing, she wasn't playing. She was like watching and being entertained by me trying to do something that she was really good at and I really stunk at. And I think ultimately the bonding that took place in that interaction was more important than whether or not she should play video games. That's right. You know what I'm saying? So like, 100%. I think even parents, we need to think outside the box, even of some of the stuff I've told people, like, don't let your kids sit alone in a room and play video games, not because video games are evil, but because letting your child be alone and disconnected from human beings and not sharing their experience and so forth and so on can be a problem over time. That's the issue. It's not the game. in and of itself. Some maybe, but not this particular one anyway. So I just things in moderation, and check for connection. What you're describing, you're describing connection. You're describing interacting in the human world.
Right.
And using technology in a humane way. That's what I hear.
Yeah. Can I comment on that? That's beautiful. So great job being a great mother and choosing connection over rules and obedience, because one day, mom and dads out there, your child will move out, and these 18 years that you have with them, or 22 years, or whatever you have, these are the glory days. So understand it. You're an adult. You understand. You left your mom's house and your dad's house at one point, and so did I. And I haven't moved back, but every time I go back there, I love my mom and dad, and I'm like, it's like, man, I really had an opportunity here. And, you kind of like, regret, I should have done this better to my mom and dad, this and that. But mom and dad, your child's going to have that. So choose that. And in opposition, or I should say, as maybe a counter position to the video game conversation, is that I used to be a video game nerd for a few years, and I liked playing the video games. And then after a while, I got sick of it. So there are phases that men and women go through as video gamers, and some people do become professionals. Some of them become game designers. Some of them become game marketers, game testers. And there are many people making a lot of money in the video game industry. And then more important than the money and the career aspect of it is like, my child creates video games. How proud are you going to feel? It doesn't matter how proud you are. It matters how happy they are with their own life. If they want to be a video game designer, they're allowed to do that. So the key thing I would say about video gaming is that it allows concentration development. So I would buy the Street Fighter 2 strategy guide. I would buy these guides, and I would learn, and how do I win 007? How do I get the magic golden gun or something like that, And so I was like studying. I was in the back of the car rides. I'm reading video games so I can beat my brother. My brother was always beat me up. He's 4 years older than me. And I'm like, how can I defeat my brother and their friends, And then I got over it. But what I didn't get over was researching, reading, learning, not for grades, but for my own pleasure and satisfaction. Right. And I'm sure that's what your daughter's doing. And then what your daughter's doing, I want to give a major shout out, is she's doing video editing, which is one of the most important professional business skills in the next generation, because we're communicating on video. Some of us don't know how to edit, and some of us do. Some of us know how to make a sexy video. That's called a marketing video that people will pay you hundreds of thousands of dollars to make. So if you're making videos for free, you could get paid if you wanted to. You call up. Here's what a teenager, opportunity. You call up a local business. Hey, listen, Mr. Business Owner, I'm a video editor. I'm just starting my business. Would it be okay if I use some of your logos and maybe make some video for 30 seconds or 60 seconds, and then I'll put it on there? And if you guys like it, you can put it on the internet. Yeah, how much did it cost me? I'll do it for free. For free? Why? I'm building my portfolio so I can get real paying clients in the future.
I've told this exact thing to my kids. I'm like, my daughter's a photographer, my older one. I'm like, take pictures, offer your services in the summer, you have your regular job at Starbucks, and then offer your services as kind of like an intern or gopher to a local photographer. In the meantime, put your gorgeous nature photography out on like Unsplash or something like that with your name and everything. That becomes your portfolio. People might use it, give you tips. And then when you feel like you've gotten enough of a following of people using your gorgeous photography, you go to a pay model. But in the meantime, you got to build a name for yourself. You've got to build, people got to see that you're out there. And I've been suggesting this because she's so talented. She's like, oh, you can't make money doing them. I'm like, only can't, never could. People are. People are.
Okay, I got a video that I'll send to you, and maybe your daughter will appreciate it because it's not you. It's some other expert. One of the guys from Shark Tank, Mr. Wonderful, has a great clip, and he says, if you're a writer, a videographer, or a video editor, your future is bright. So that might be one clip that she could take a look at. That might be helpful. And because sometimes mom and dad, they called normalcy bias. They are around you all the time. You're just normal. Although you're a massive, great woman and you love them more than anybody on the planet, they're like, that's normal. So you got to get some advice from outside.
Yeah. I get that all the time. Well, you think my photography is good, but you're my mom. And I'm like, dude, your photography is objectively good. And if it weren't, I just wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't say like, it's crap, but I wouldn't be like fawning all over it. Right. And I'm not a liar. I'm just like, no, for real. It's really good. And I'll go show other people. I'm like, come on, what do you think? And I won't tell them it's hers. And then I'll get the notes back. I'll say, I know somebody took this picture. Do you think it's pretty good or whatever? And they'll say like, that's excellent. The composition is really good. I like the lighting, whatever. I'll take a screenshot. I'll go, it's not just mom. But she's so caught up in this, the even if your kids are out of school, but they were in for a little while, it's really hard to break that habit. So, I mean, that's one thing I do tell parents is that you're going to have to work a little harder. Like we said at the outset, you're going to have to work a little harder to kind of de-school them and get the taint off them of the negativity or the like, I'm not as good as other people and, whatever. And you can do it. And the longer they're gone and the more you encourage them, I think it's totally possible. I did have one practical question to ask you because somebody asked it farther back in the chat and I meant to get to it. There's a big question amongst parents about this topic, how to finance access to high quality teaching and coaching. We talked about mentors and different people and, you get it free when you go to school or free. It's not free. We know it's not really free, but you know what I'm saying? Like they're not asking you to pull out your checkbook. So and right now, I mean, one upside, I guess, of them getting rid of it in the public school is that it's easier to make the argument that they're not even giving it to you. It's like you're not even getting that.
They're not. Absolutely.
So what are ways you mentioned you could start your own league? What are ways that parents could do things like this on a shoestring, or they could get financing, or are you familiar or aware? Because I know you're in California and it's probably even harder there. The property taxes are crazy.
Well, the number one thing, mom and dad, is in your mind is what you believe in education to be. It's not some expert telling you what is. It is the fire inside of curiosity and humility to go explore. And so the one free resource I would provide to you is your local library. Very powerful. You're going to see a bunch of learners in there. And that's the opposite of a public school is you go into a library and everybody's voluntarily learning books and internet for free because it's all there. So what schools are doing are removing your child's curiosity. They're removing your child's ability to ask questions. They're removing your child's distinction of looking at truth and falsity. So that's what mom and dad, the challenge is not in the children. I have to say, Christine and the audience members out there, it is in mom and dad thinking what is an education. And so you want to look at what is success. What are we after? And then go to the library. Also, we're doing it right now. We're on the World Wide Web. We're on YouTube. We're on Google. We're on BitChute. We're on Start Page. We're on, all these are free databases that were not around 20 years ago. There is no excuses, mom and dad, that you don't have access to the information. You can look at all these great keynote speeches by billionaires, millionaires, artists, inspirational stories of triumph, of free coding, free math, Khan Academy, all these amazing things that are on there. What's happening is that they're trying to provide excuses for themselves because it's scary. And what I'll say something to them out there is, yes, it is scary, just like everything that we do when we try something new. What we're doing is called uncharted territory. We're going into the unknown. We're going into the darkness. But I promise you, there's a flashlight right inside the door. There's a switch. There's candles. There's lights. And then I would say it's a small growth curve, mom and dad, where you have to do a little bit of work on your own thinking. This is what you got to do the work on. But most of the work is on the child. Whereas the public school, it's 95% the public school teachers, it's 5% the student doing obedience, compliance, and whatever they're told to do.
That's
in the
true.
Homeschool,
they overestimate the expertise.
Yeah, it's in the homeschool with mom and dad. You're doing 5% maybe.
Right.
Provide the space, provide the environment, provide the resources, and then the child gets to do all the work. And I would compare a education to a fit body. And the question is, how do you get a fit body? You got to go to the gym. You got to eat healthy. Well, how do you become educated? You got to read stuff. You got to learn stuff. You got to try stuff. You got to, develop yourself. You got to take a look inside. This is why all the great philosophies say that the only true knowledge is self-knowledge, right? We don't know ourselves. So this is a great opportunity that parents have to think about. What we're talking about is how much effort do you have to put? Well, first part
Right.
is redefining what is an education, redefining what is success, and then look at the libraries, look at the internet, and understand that the last 150 years of the school system has been the experiment.
Right.
All of history, it's been one room schoolhouse, many ages teaching each other, and Gatto goes through that in the books that he's written on his YouTube channel, and it's all there. But you got to take time. And what could be
Right.
more important than the success, the happiness, the health of your child? And we're not saying this from a statist perspective, which is give us the property taxes. In Texas, I just found out the property tax is over 2.2% or something. They just increased it. And whatever state you are right now in this country, I'm sure property tax is going up, and they're going to say it's for the children. It's not for the children. It's for the mega corporations. It's for the people who are profiting like a champion from this system. A real education costs $0, evidenced by a free library card, free books, free internet, and of course, there's like internet costs and none of these things. But to become an educated person is to think for yourself, is to evaluate, to assess, to observe, to make your own goals, to follow through, to have discipline, to have persistence, to have compassion, to raise your consciousness as a human being and become who you determine you are to be, and allow that space for your child. Because when they're in the old age and they're sending you off, they're going to say, Mom and Dad, thank you for trusting in me. Thank you for allowing me to be who I am and not forcing me to go to be what I'm not. And I'll wrap up here. Just this last part is about the 5 regrets of dying, written by a nurse who interviewed people on their deathbed the last 6 weeks of their life. And there's 5 of them. I don't know if I can remember them all, but it's basically like this. I wish I would have been more true to myself. I wish I would have had more courage to do what I wanted to do, live a life what I wanted rather than what somebody else wanted to be. I wish I had courage to express my emotions to people. And those types of regrets, those are the major regrets. So we want to avoid those by being aware of them now, and then allowing our child and sons and daughters and friends and family to learn what they want to learn is exciting and it's glorious. It doesn't have to be forced. In fact, when you force something, you are making it now useless and not valuable. Just like a forced marriage or a forced relationship could be called rape and all these things. This is the level of the school system right now. It is the burning 100%. Building, and you can't mess them up, Mom and Dad. You love them. You love them more than anybody on the earth. So you have you have that confidence alone. You love your child more than I do, and Deb, you are the one. And if you just reprogram yourself, I think it's a very feasible and exciting opportunity to homeschool and to get your kids out of the school system. So if there's any final questions in the audience or yourself, I'm happy to answer. And I was really happy to share with you some of these ideas that Gatto has laid out for a few decades, that many other people have laid out. Now we're standing in a critical time in history where every child is important, and one child can make a huge difference. We see that by the lives of Gandhi and MLK, and some of the people that you might respect out there who stand up against the current of tyranny and alienation and try to make you feel bad for calling out the truth. It's always the right time to speak the truth, to do what's right, and your children hold that hope
for your child. I mean, that's the key thing. It's like, if you're feeling inhibited at all to ask questions or to push for answers that make sense to you, just remember, it's your baby. Like, I mean, I keep having to say this to people, but you're absolutely right. And I think what I'm hoping people take away from everything you said today, is inspiration and, maybe a little spring in their step to take on the challenge. We're not telling you it's a piece of cake, it's cakewalk or whatever. We're telling you it's a wonderful adventure. It is something that you might think, I'm making sacrifices, I'm doing this, but you're really not. You're actually getting an enormous gift, and you're giving an enormous gift to your children, to your family. And it's the kind of thing where it looks way, way worse at the beginning. Then once you're in it, you're like, why was I so wigged out about this? Like, well, this is actually not only easier than I thought it would be, it's so much better than I thought it would be. So
absolutely,
I would just encourage everybody to really give it a serious thought. Summer's coming. The actual school year is ending. If your kids are in school, you got the summer to think about it, plan it. Their kids aren't going to school for daycare or whatever. So you obviously had to solve that problem somehow. Just imagine, allow yourself to imagine that they don't go back.
Yes.
Just
right.
Allow that thought to wash over you and think of the things that will be back in your control, the worries you're not going to have, the pressures you're not going to have, the stresses that the child is not going to have, not to mention expenses. And just let yourself do that, because I honestly believe your kid is better off. I seriously believe that they're better off staying home and doing nothing. Literally no organized curriculum whatsoever for the first 3 months of the year next year. If you haven't figured it out, then they are going back into that hell. That is my personal opinion. People's mileage may vary, but I've been on the inside, I've been on the outside, and like you said, kids are, because we had this COVID lockdown. Oh, they're locked out of school. It's so terrible. And I remember thinking at the time, like, the only thing terrible about it is that everyone's saying how terrible it is. And that they don't, and that they're sitting home in stasis. Their parents are like, open the school, instead of thinking, do you know the kids who did okay? The parents have said, screw this shit, I'm teaching them. Where's the book? Like, they're the ones who fared okay. The ones who are wringing their hands and going, oh my God, they can't learn anything because they're not in the building, and didn't take steps to get them together with their friends as best they could. They're the ones who suffered. It wasn't the closing of the building that was the problem. It was the closing of the mind that's the only place. The learning has to happen in there. Oh my God, what do we do? And I'm sitting there going, golden opportunity, you guys, you're free.
Yes. That's awesome. I love how you put that. And that is one of the silver linings of this whole scamdemic the last 2 years, which is the homeschooling. I think some of the numbers doubled.
11% last I checked.
Yeah, double, triple, parents pulling their kids out and they're starting to scramble. And so I think part of the good work is redefining what success is. And since we're at the end, I'll give you my definition of success. And mom and dad, you can choose to agree or not, or maybe have your own definition of actual success, which I stole from Coach John Wooden, the world famous basketball coach at UCLA, was that success is peace of mind, which is a direct result of self-satisfaction in knowing you made the effort to become your best. In short, success is doing the best that you can and knowing that it's all good. One of my other mentors, a billionaire football coach, Art Williams, he said, all you can do is all you can do, but all you can do is enough. And so if you take this same philosophy for educating your child, and even the idea that you can't really educate somebody, they have to do it to themselves. As I mentioned, the fit body metaphor, you can get somebody a gym membership, but they have to do the work. And that's what you're doing with your child. You've brought them to earth. Congratulations. You've given them love. Congratulations. And now the world is their oyster, right? This is a true thing for young people. And so what do they want to create of their life? That's up to them. And you can seed them, put salt in their oats and try to litter and put things out there. Yes, you might be able to guide them some direction for a while, but ultimately they're going to realize this is my life, and so you want to have that honorable position that, you know what, I opened my hands like a bird and the bird flew away and the bird came back. Because many times the home life is so unfun that the kids don't want to come back because the bond got broken. The relationship, the trust, and the love got broken. And so I believe that, your audience members here appreciate and know that love is the answer and that this is what they already have been doing. And now you're a little bit more aware of some of these options out there, but it's upside down. Yep. One is left or one is up and down or right, and everything's confused. We've been lied to backwards about the education system, the medical system, the financial system, the communication system, health system, food system. It's all coming down, my friends. And I got to tell you, this is the great self-ownership awakening. You're going to be hearing this question a lot in the future. Who owns your body? Because from that truth stems the new liberation of humanity. And that is, we are going to build our own schools, build our own health clinics, hospitals, grocery stores, farms. We don't need coercive organizations in our life. And we're going to do it with strength and community. And so you can start sports clubs, you can start whatever types of gathering, but it is up to each one of us to take our own leadership, and we can do it, and you can do it. And you can email me if you want to do some coaching, info@homeschoolleader.com. You can check out some of the other videos, the groups, but it's one child that can make a difference And it's your child who is going to have that opportunity. And what a great, glorious chance for you to be that parent when your child's doing great things in the world. And you say, you know what, it's because my mom, was there for me, or my dad, or my grandfather, whoever it was. It's always one. And I'm so grateful that I love, both my parents. And it was the love of my mother who gave me a lot of my connection with myself and years of, mistakes and her being there. And of course, my father was there too. But she was just really connected to her own emotional self and her own bad childhood, or relatively so. And I got to realize, oh man, I'm really blessed here. And, we'd go help out, let's say, some orphanage a couple times. And I was like 9 or 10. And I was just like, I can't get the image out of my head. So in wrapping up, the great quote by Gatto, one of them is that children need adventure and explorations and experience more than they need algebra. So make sure you have your priorities right, mom and dad. The distinction between an education and a schooling, defining what success is, being on board with your spouse, and the curriculums. You can create them as you go. Get over 20 of them in the Facebook group, and have the idea of the 4 phases of homeschooling and where you are. And this has been going on for thousands of years. You can totally do it. I believe you're going to do it. May this summer be the best summer ever of learning and applying this in the fall, so that you never have to send your child back to a building where they use coercion, intimidation, and don't let your child get a drink of water when they ask for it.
Yes, exactly. Well, David, thank you so much for this inspiring talk. I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time today. And guys, down in the description section are all the ways you can communicate with David and check out his channels as well. And I really hope you take this to heart, share it with your friends who are sort of, thinking about what they want to do with schooling. And I thank you all, and I hope you have a great weekend. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.